guys so much for being here. I know that the men folk appreciated our morning conversation, and I apologize to all the lady folk who weren't here for it. Don't feel too excluded. We're doing the best we can. It's my pleasure to introduce Father Hans again. Father Hans came 2 years ago to talk to the men, and the fruit of that conversation was instrumental, I think, in the health of this parish maintaining through the COVID ordeal. Now, that ordeal's not done, and the men aren't fully healthy, but we're working on it. And I'm incredibly grateful for Father Hans on a personal level and also for the health of this parish. What I heard from the rest of the parish who wasn't part of that initial weekend with Father Hans was, when can the ladies come and be part of this? And so when I asked Father if he would come back to Dallas, he said, I'd be happy to, but really I'm here to talk to the men. And I said, I'm gonna have a ride on my hands if I don't also invite the ladies too. So I'm really glad. Father likes to pretend like he only has insight that helps men, and I just don't think that's true. Anyways, Father Hans, for those of you who don't know, is a mission priest. Is it still a mission?
No, we're a church.
Oh, it is no longer a mission. So I guess that he's been a successful mission priest in Fort Myers, Florida, and he's at the Antiochian Archdiocese, and it's our joy to have him back here in Dallas talking to us today. Father Hans?
Thank you.
I got so many comments on the internet thing. I'm going to take a little time and talk about that. And then I want to say something else. Okay, guys, it's not a neutral space. It's not a neutral space. Understand that when you're on most of the internet, I'm not talking about people's private websites, but say Facebook, you're not making choices. You are, but the choices are limited. You're being given the choices you're allowed to make. All right? That's what's happening. There is no independence of thought here. There's only the illusion of independence of thought. Because it's decided for you already what's going to appear on the screen. And that's even when you do a search, a Google search. It's decided for you what your options are. And as the algorithms get more sophisticated, and they're very sophisticated, in the end, you will be led to the choice that they want you to make. Now, what's the engine driving this? It's the energy of commerce. Look, you've got three energies in the world, ultimately, in culture. You've got sexual energy, you've got commercial energy, and you've got the energy of the Holy Spirit. That's all you've got, okay? The energy of the Holy Spirit is actually what brings a broken creation into unbrokenness, into redemption, and which contextualizes the commercial energy and the sexual energy into their proper order. But if there's no Holy Spirit, which is to say if a secular mind operates, the secular mind is prone to ideology. And then the commercial energy and the sexual energy serve what? Well, ultimately the appetites, because there is no constraint and there is no illumination. So when you have the emergence of the internet, which is a great blessing in many, many ways, knowledge is just, it's accessible. It's accessible. But the opportunity for the control of men's thoughts are great as well. So let's look at Facebook, for example. How does Facebook operate? Well, again, it's driven by commercial energy, because if things can be offered to you that you like, and if it can be recorded, the things that you like can be recorded, you're going to see more and more and more of that. Okay, that's how Facebook operates. And then you're going to stay within that ecosystem. You're going to stay there because it appears, first of all, it's comfortable, but it appears neutral. You see a world in a way that you think it should be seen. And you're going to click, and you're going to click, and your friends are going to be chosen for you, and you're going to become a slave. All right? Now, you can put a political spin on this too, because frankly, when I see Facebook, I see the East German Stasi. Now, I'm not saying Facebook is the Stasi. I'm saying that the information methodology that Facebook employs is the same methodology that the East German Stasi used to employ. By the way, do you know where they got that informational architecture? You know who gave it to them in the beginning? IBM. The reason the Nazis knew where everybody lived, see, that requires an informational architecture. How do you, first of all, gather that information, and how do you collate it, and then how do you store it? See, huge problems, huge mathematical problem. They got it from IBM, because IBM was one of the first companies that dealt in information management. Now, I'm not saying that IBM was secretly a Nazi organization. I'm saying that it was sold to the German government and then used for the rounding up of Jews and other dissidents. That's all I'm saying, okay? And that's how it happened, which is to say this stuff can be misused. Be very aware of that. It can be misused. Every time you go on Facebook, every time you go on Google, everything you do is recorded, and it's put in some, they call it the cloud, but what the cloud really are big computing stations. Iceland, wherever there's a river. They need a river for cooling, and they need an electric grid, so it's usually near a power plant that can operate it. But it's all stored. Am I saying this is nefarious? Not necessarily. Am I saying, is it deliberate? Yes. It's being driven by that commercial spirit. Could it be nefarious? Yes, it could be. Understand what you're doing. Now, those of us who live in the thought world of the internet, you're being manipulated too. And it isn't that there's a person behind the curtain. You know, there's the wizard who's pulling the levers. That's what people think. No, these things have they have a trajectory of their own because the vectors are all the same. Now, those vectors can be manipulated, but some of it is just the vectors of complex systems. It's not necessarily nefarious. But don't believe that it's neutral. Don't believe that it's neutral, because the human mind doesn't work that way. Every time you hear a news story repeated, you're not hearing it in the way that you heard it the first time. And with the 24-hour news cycle, you'll hear, if you're really tuned into it, you'll hear stories 10 or 15 times. But every time you hear that story, there's a magnification that occurs inside of you. We're not aware of it because, we've heard that. We're just hearing the same story. No, you're hearing it again. And because you're hearing it again, there's an amplification of intensity, of impression that occurs in you. And that shapes your thought world. That shapes your thought world. And it's largely imperceptible, but it's very strong because it's repetitious. And if our minds are actually immersed in the virtual world, right, it shapes how you think and how you see the world. And you have to be aware of this. It's imperceptible. In other words, we don't feel the processes, but you will feel the visceral stimulation of it. You'll look at it and, it's something you disagree with politically, and you'll see the scene. You'll see the scene. And you'll react to that scene, and as you watch it, the reaction hardens, but the informational content seems more certain and more secure, and it fills a larger part of your thought world. And as it fills a larger part of your thought world, you take what's virtual and you actually step into the real world, but you see it with a virtual mind. Because someone else has shaped your thinking. We really need to do more work on this. We really need to understand this better because it's a new phenomenon. But here's what I challenge you to do. And I do this. I hardly ever watch TV, the news now and then. I hardly ever watch a movie on TV. Maybe half a movie a month. That's it. I do not watch, not out of choice, but I don't have the time to sit in front of my computer screen and watch videos. I mean, that's a tremendous imposition on my time. I'm more creative than that. And the reason I'm busy is because I'm creative. That's why I'm busy. The reason that there are demands on my time is because I do really substantive work. But the reason I do substantive work is because my mind is in reality. There's two places my mind goes. It's dealing with reality as it is, and it's in contemplative prayer, trying to come into the presence of the Lord. That's what it is. And it's the reason I can deal with reality as it is, and the reason I'm effective in it is because of that prayer. It's not because I'm spending all my time trying to figure out virtually what life is about, and I have other people putting their impressions in me. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. All that will happen if you do that is some of the hard assumptions, the metaphysical propositions that you had coming into Orthodoxy, that actually was one of the reasons, some of those propositions that caused the suffering in your life that brought you to Christ, they won't be transformed. What will happen is they'll be hardened, and you'll try and conform the faith to something that is foreign to it, propositions and assumptions that are foreign to it. This is what will happen. And instead of we being transformed by the Spirit of God into whole men, we will end up trying to transform the faith into what we think it should attack, what it should express, what it should speak to, and we'll distort the faith and cut ourselves off from the transformative grace that saves us and makes us whole. Do you understand that? Because when you're dealing in the virtual, you are dealing only with impressions and sensations and ideas. Remember I said ideas are not neutral? They always have a spirit with them. Ideas that kind of come prepackaged for you to react in a particular emotional way. Now, if the reaction is such that it conforms to things you might agree with, you're going to let them in. If they don't, then what's going to happen is they're going to provoke you. They're going to provoke you, and you're going to respond. But I'm telling you, in the virtual world, there is no balance, and there is no real sense of what is true and necessary. But because it's virtual, and because it it prompts and stimulates responses on our end, it can trap you in thinking that this is really what's important versus what really is. So the challenge is this: cut yourself off from social media for a month. Cut yourself off for a month. Do this test. See if your mind doesn't first clarify and then sharpen. Test it, because I guarantee you it will. You pull your head out of social media and the virtual wars and start engaging life on its own terms, your clarity about what is true, what is good, what is necessary, what my role is in this world, what it should be, will sharpen. Will sharpen. Your mind will clear, and you'll be able to discern the voice of God from the cacophony, kakos phonos, bad sound. That's where the word comes from, kakos phonos, bad sound, cacophony in English. You'll be able to see your own thoughts apart from the clutter surrounding you. And if you can see your own thoughts, you'll also be able to see the stirrings and direction of your own heart. And if you can see those two things, you're on your way to becoming a free and independent man, because you are accountable to no one but the Lord alone in the end. And your brothers who walk with the Lord in the same way will confirm that you are indeed on the right path. But the sense of freedom, the sense of maturity, the sense of the seriousness and sobriety that living life as a real man requires, it comes to you. But so does the meaning and the joy, because you're thinking clearly, because you've brought yourself out of the cacophony, because you're not being manipulated by men, more devious men, who are very sophisticated in the ways of manipulation, and you're not being deceived that this is indeed a true and right way to engage the world. You understand what I mean? It's very important, because if you're not seeking freedom, you will be controlled. If you're not working on your own goals, you will be working on someone else's. Incontrovertible. If you're not working on your own goals, you will be working on someone else's. It's the way the world is structured. If you're not seeking freedom for yourself, you're going to end up somebody else's slave. Don't let others fill your thought world with stuff that you don't let in. Don't let them do it. Read Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives. Read that book. Read that book. Put away some of the debates and read that book. Become an informed, Orthodox son of God. But don't let others inform you what it's supposed to be. Do your own homework. Educate yourselves. Read that book and look at the power of the thoughts. Read that book and learn by how recognizing your thoughts and controlling your thoughts brings you freedom in Christ. Step out of the cacophony. Step out of it. No one is to tell you who to think, except the apostles and the fathers. And the debates between this person and that person, they might both be good people, But these incessant debates create no light. All they do is add to the clutter, increase the noise. Another impression for us to take in, and in the end, our soul just collapses out of exhaustion. And our mind gets cluttered, and all the old, don't tell me this doesn't happen. Then all the old passions, right? All the old passions, they start bubbling up, and pretty soon we resort to that, and we start all over. That's the truth. So that's all I have to say about it, but it's very important. It's very, very important. There's stuff happening here. It's a new development, the information overflows, a new development in world history and civilizational history, and we don't quite understand it yet. But don't think it's benign. It's not. It's not. Okay, second thing I want to say before I get into it, to the guys here. Listen, we know what the struggles are. We know what the struggles are. If anyone really has a hard time in one area or another, give me a call. And I'll help you over it. I'll help you overcome it. Okay? There is ways out. But you got to do it. You got to do it in relationship with someone else. It's not possible. You know what I'm talking about. Give me a call and we'll overcome it. I'll help you. All right, so that was it. Ladies, I was pulling back from the other lecture, but I'm here to talk about to the ladies and the men. Okay, now I have to be honest with you. I'm a lot better with guys than I am women. And the reason is because I'm a guy, right? So it's easier to figure out. And women are a mystery, to a certain extent, to many men. I think to all men. And then the second thing is that a woman's heart is one of the most fragile things in this creation. And we guys don't know that, unfortunately, until we hurt someone's heart, and then we see the reaction. And I see the women are real interested in this part. All right? They're real interested in this part. I'm not very good at marriage counseling because I don't have the patience. But I'm really good. I don't have the patience for it. But I'll do it if I have to. But I'm really good at diagnosing problems. Okay, really good. And I can kind of see why this marriage is having trouble. And I'll tell the people, this, you got to do this, you got to do that. I don't really see marriage as a partnership, as two equals coming together, because I don't see marriage fundamentally as a political or egalitarian enterprise. I think it's the blending of people, the two becoming one flesh. But the two coming together, there's one's male and one's female. And male and female are different. How do you say it? They're not the same. That's all I'm going to say, rather than try and explain it theologically, because even if I explained it theologically, we really don't get it unless we have to deal with it in real life, right? And we are here dealing with real life. So we know there's a difference. So I thought, okay, when Jesse asked me to do this, I thought, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I thought about, well, what are some common misunderstandings? Let's talk about some misunderstandings that women have about, well, let's talk about this, because this is how it was titled. What men wish that the women would understand about men. And the reason I chose that was because it's safe. That's why, because I know that part of it, okay? What women would wish men would understand about women? Well, I know a few things. I've been married a while. I know a few things. One is that a woman's heart is very fragile, very fragile. I know that women wish that their guys would listen to them more. Okay, is this true, ladies? You got to let me know. Yeah. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, a little more. And women love their men, okay, and I think the women would wish that the men would show their love for them a little bit more as well. We're going to talk about all that. All right. But first we're going to talk about what men wish women understood about them, primarily wives. I was in my office once. It was a baptism or something, but there was a couple in my office, and it was kind of a casual thing. We were playing out paperwork, and so we'll call the guy George, and we'll call the woman Georgia. Anyway, I'm doing the paperwork. They're waiting for me, and Georgia starts nagging Yorgos, and this kept on for a few minutes, and I said, Georgia, why are you nagging George? Father, you just don't understand what he does. And I said, but I knew George. I knew him. I knew George. I knew them both, right? And I said, wait a second here. Georgia, I says, what's the problem? Does he go out and drink? No. Is he home every night? Yeah. Does he love the kids? I knew the answer was all yes. I said, does he love the kids? He goes, yeah. Does every dime he makes goes to you and the kids? Yeah. Yeah. I said, is there any real problems? Well, not really. I said, Georgia, what are you complaining for? You got a good man. Stop the nagging, I told her. And then that opened up another door, right? And it's this. It's really important, I think, that women understand this. I know why women nag their men. I know why they nag their men, because they're afraid what it is. It's not so much that the thing won't get done, but they're not being heard. That's a big thing. They're not being heard. The problem is, when you nag your guy checks out. He checks out. No guy can take it. So the nagging starts, you go, yeah, okay, honey, okay. And it continues. And you want to say, I heard you the first time, because you did. You really did. But she doesn't know that because you're not responding, right? But the women, you have to understand this. A guy cannot take it. He just can't take it. And you keep doing it, you know what he's going to do? He's going to go into the cave, and he's going to shut the door. And you're going to be shut out. Okay, and what it's going to feel like to you is that he abandoned you. He abandoned you. And in a way, he kind of did, because he can't take it. Well, guys should just be more sensitive. Guys are guys. They're wired in a particular way. And if there's someone pounding on them, okay, if it's a guy, they're going to pound back, because that's the way you stop the pounding. But they're not going to do that to a woman, because you don't pound a woman. A guy who pounds a woman is something's wrong, and we got to fix that. But he won't pound you. He might verbally lash out, because he can only take so much. But if you keep doing it, he's going to go in his cave, and he's going to shut the door. You're going to feel abandoned, right? And out of that sense of abandonment, you might nag even more. I tell you, that door's going to be shut tighter, and tighter. You can't nag your men. You can't nag your men. When women try and take charge, this is very anti-feminist. This is one of the things that they would cut my head off for, like John the Baptist. But there is a fundamental difference between male and female, and when women take charge, men check out. If men don't check out, then what they do is they leave their manhood at the door and they become betas. And when you become a beta, then what you do is you substitute moral virtue signaling for the acquisition of real virtue. You give up the struggle to get the accolades of the female and the other betas. Okay? The problem is that it is so destructive to your soul, and there's such a sense of self-humiliation for any man who does that, that in the end, he'll either collapse under that or becomes a really vicious ideologue. That's what happens. Because don't ask a man to give up the struggle for real virtue. Don't ask him. Because a real man will, in the end, he won't do it, and he'll check out. That's what'll happen. Ask a man to become a woman, and if he does, he transforms into a beta, and his own self-loathing makes him an enemy of mankind. If he doesn't get crushed by the consequences of his own vice first. That's what happens. So in a marriage, men, tell your wives you heard them. They need to know that they were heard. They deserve that. Women need to know they're heard. It's really important. But women, if he tells you he's going to do it, he'll do it. He might not do it tonight or tomorrow, but he'll do it. This will save, I tell you, a lot of stress in marriages, because these little things, they get into bigger things, but it's the feeling of being nagged, it's the feeling of being abandoned on the woman's side, right? Change that through, they always say everything's good communication. Actually, things are following through on your commitments. And that'll do it, okay? Got another one. This is, every guy who's married will relate to this. I don't really know how you're feeling unless you tell me. Okay? Listen, women, all the guys are going like this. Women are intuitive, and here's what you do, ladies. I'm not going like this, but here's what you do. Sometimes you test your husband. You test your husband. If he really loves me, he would know what I'm feeling. That's what you think. So you're not really clear in your communication. You're just kind of like pushing out the feeling. Guys, I'll tell you what happens to the guys. That confuses, pardon my French, I'm in the church, the hell out of us. We don't know how to deal with that. We just don't know. We can't process feelings that don't match with words. You need to tell us, and don't test us. So I've seen this a couple of times. I've talked to some people whose marriages were really on the rocks. Usually the husband screwed up in some way or another. And these screw-ups affect women a lot more than they do men. Men screw up, we'll fix it. We will fix it, and we won't do it again. We won't do it again. Sometimes men screw up and they don't realize how big the screw-up is until they see the consequences. But they're not men of malicious or malevolent intent. They're not men of a corroded moral character. They're men who face the same struggle all men face, and they won't make the same mistake again. I know that. I can see that. But the woman, they have a harder time with that. They have a hard time forgiving their men because they feel like it's a personal betrayal, okay? And so what they demand, and this is, I think, increasing because of feminism, what they demand is that the man feel the way that they feel, because then they think the man will understand the extent of what he did wrong. And I had that just very recently. We'll call her Georgia again. All right? He's got to feel what I'm feeling, she said. I said, Georgia, he's never going to feel what you're feeling. He's not a woman. She looked at me. I said, he can't feel what you're feeling. He isn't wired like you. He's wired differently. All he can do is tell you that he's sorry. All he can do is tell you he'll do better. And in fact, the issue happened 10 years before this point. So that's how long this has been. And there was nothing wrong in those 10 years. Nothing happened in those 10 years. I said, it's been 10 years. You got to forgive this man. He's got to feel what I'm feeling. That was her condition for forgiveness. And I understand why a woman would say that, because women are, there's a lot of ways to say this. I mean, men are hierarchical, right? We build bridges, skyscrapers, fix cars. We make things happen. Women are more egalitarian, okay? Mothers, relational, and they see the world relationally. Listen to women talk. Listen to how they talk, and then try and discern the pattern that's guiding it underneath it, and you see that. But to demand, in her case, to demand that the man feel it in the same way that she feels it is simply not possible. It's not possible. And I'm hearing that more and more, and I'm seeing that's a condition that women demand of men. And I'm telling you, men are not going to be able to fulfill that. That's not the way our interior orientation works. There was an article in The Atlantic, a very far-left magazine, about the problem with boys, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. This will be interesting because I'm interested in it, right? And I read it, and it was evaluating the boy in light of what constitutes a healthy girl. And I thought, this is completely infected with feminist nonsense. Completely. I read it very carefully. It says a feminist wrote this. Obviously a feminist wrote this. But the feminists, what they do is they politicize. They remove the relational egalitarian characteristics of a woman's interior life, and they politicize it. They actually weaponize it, is what they do, and it's politicization. And then they shoot it out into the culture to destroy what? Ultimately to destroy masculinity and patriarchy. That was the point of that article. Now we're going to do it with our little boys. Little boys are under a lot of attack the way it is by both feminism and homosexualism, right? But they take what is good. They take what is good and they distort it. So we fight this, though, in our own lives, and we try and live life right in our own lives. So, ladies, if you want to know, if you want your husband to know how you are feeling, you got to tell him. He's not going to be able to figure it out on his own. You got to tell him. And then, guys, when you hear it, you have to sympathize with it. Okay? You have to sympathize with it. All right. There's a corollary to that. Don't think because I've heard you, however, you got to listen to it, I said, guys. But don't think because I heard you, I will feel it in the same way you do. It's not because your husbands are cold and uncaring. It's because they're men. It's because they're men. Let them love you in the way that they love you. Let them love you in the way that they love you and accept that love. But there's a hierarchy. There's an order. And we read it yesterday in the blessing. You know, women submit themselves to the man, but the man serves the woman in the same way that Christ serves the church and died for it. Okay? And so that submission there, see, everything's been so weaponized and politicized, too much internet in this world, that we hear the word submission and immediately we think of it in neo-Marxist categories as a power differential. It's not that at all. It's an ordering. Because the woman, because of the generosity of her heart and her relational nature, is able to take in what appears to be an inequity in the relationship, but that strengthens her husband. And in the strengthening of her husband, it provides her and the children much more security. And the security is very important as well. It's very important. In the culture, it says it's egalitarian, it's equality, men and women are partners. But the reality is it doesn't really work that way even outside of marriage. I mean, corporations headed by women generally don't do very well. They don't. That's not a knock on women. It's to say that women are suited to some things better than men are, and men are suited to other things better than women are. That's reality. Why is this such a radical thing to say? It's a radical thing to say because it strikes at the heart of that egalitarianism in the neo-Marxist myth. And the neo-Marxist myth is just it's really a derivative of Christianity, but distorted. If there was no Christianity, there would be no Marxism. All right? If there was no Christianity, there would be no egalitarianism and notion of fairness and fair play, even between the sexes. But to take those notions forward and to obliterate actually sexual distinctions? No. To collapse categories of being, male and female? No. That we don't do. I'm taking this a little farther than I intended to, but you look at the sports things, okay? You hear things like birthing mother or birthing person now, right? Because men can have babies. Come on. The problem is that you cannot erase the biological binaries. Men's bodies are a certain way, women's bodies are a certain way. But that we're supposed to ignore. And the way that ignorance is coming into the culture is this way, as we collapse sex and gender. I know when I use the word gender, people think male and female. That's not what gender means. That's what sex means. What sex are you? I'm male or female. Well then, Father, what's gender? Gender is how male and female is expressed in different cultures. That's what gender is. Like, for example, if you've ever been to Greece and you go to Syntagma Square in the middle of Athens, and you go to the tomb of the unknown soldier, and they have soldiers there in ceremonial warrior dress. And that dress comes from centuries ago. To the American eye, when you first see it, it's very odd. It's even silly because they look like a cocktail dress to the American eye. But to the Greek, it's something really serious because it's cultural. It says something different. That's gender. So even though the man's wearing a dress, to the American eye, to the Greek eye, in that culture, this man is a warrior. He's representing a warrior tradition. So gender can change from culture to culture, but sex does not. So when people say, and you see this on all the application on what's your gender, it should really say what's your sex. So be aware of that. Because if you collapse sex into gender, right, then the sexual differentiation, the biological binaries, they lose their cultural power. Now, this is all manipulated through language, of course, because language determines thought. But ironically, there's one area where the word sex is maintained because it has to be clear between male and female, and that area is what? Same-sex marriage. Why don't they call it same-gender marriage? Because if you call it same-gender marriage, then the whole political vector escapes into that relativistic morass that they all want us to sink into. So they maintain same-sex marriage because it's male-male, female-female. I'm just talking about the way politics works. All right? And so moving back from that, just remember that the egalitarian impulse that comes from something good, if it's manipulated, we reject. Okay? So, I won't really know what you are feeling unless you tell me. That's where it came from, but it's important to know. I'm not here, and this is the husband talking to the wife, and this is important. Women, this is something that you've got to be very aware of. I'm not here to make you content. I can't do that. Only you can do that. I'll tell you what men struggle with. Men struggle with fidelity and commitment. Okay? That's men's struggle. Fidelity and commitment. A woman's struggle is contentment, is to be content with what God has given us. And again, it goes to our fundamental orientations. Men build, we work. That's what we do. Men posit their manhood through work. We have to work. A man who's not working is a man whose soul is atrophying. And even if that work is, the absence of work is due to circumstances, not his own volition. All right, he can't work because of COVID or something like that. It's still a deep, deep struggle for him. A man has to work. A woman does not have to work. You might say, oh, some women might want to. Yeah, maybe. But I'm not talking about just personal desire here. I'm talking about orientation. Okay? And that's because of their relational nature. That's why. But that relational nature has, and women, listen to me closely on this, also makes them more susceptible to discontentment. They become discontent much more easily than men do. We just adapt, is what we do. And if something's not working, well, we'll fix it. We'll figure it out. That's the way men approach things. For women, the discontentment is a spiritual struggle, I contend, of the same, that's not the same nature, but works in the man the same way that a man struggles with fidelity and commitment. You've got to be stable, guys, and you have to be committed. And working that virtue into your life actually brings great clarity into your life and shows you how to live. But it should be the same with the woman. The discontentment, why am I discontent? The tendency, ladies, is always to shift the blame, focus to the person causing the discontent, the one who should ease the discontentment but isn't or can't. The reality is the struggle with discontentment is your spiritual struggle, and learning how to be grateful for what you have and where you are. Because it's real hard on the man. See, it's usually, this is what causes a lot of problems in marriages as well. is the woman is not content. He's not doing this, he's not doing that, right? And the guy feels beleaguered, especially if the guy's working hard. But he feels beleaguered because it's a belittling of your man when you do that. Now, if someone's not picking up their weight and not doing what they should do, that's one thing. But most guys really give it a shot, and they give it a hard shot and a good shot and a faithful shot. You've got to support him. You can't get on him and blame him for not being content, whatever the objects might be that you're not content about. Okay? The issue is the contentment. And godliness, the Apostle Paul says, godliness with contentment is great gain. And a discontented wife, a discontented woman, if she doesn't work that out, really wears on her man, and it's very corrosive to the marriage, long term. All right. Men, you'll like this. You'll thank me for saying this. Give me time to decompress. When I decompress, I can handle everything else better. All the guys are smiling. Give me time to decompress. Okay? I know that sometimes there's urgency, and sometimes there's an emergency, and sometimes you got to take care of it when you take care of it. My daughter comes home, this was years ago, she comes home from a friend's house, and she wakes up at 2 in the morning and says, "Daddy, my hair itches. She got fleas at the friend's house. Got to run to CVS, it's 2 in the morning, right? Got to run to CVS, do all this stuff, that's an emergency, and you take care of it. But if it doesn't need to be taken care of right now, and your husband, your man, needs to decompress and just pull back and not think about stuff for a while and not do something for a while, let him do it. Let him do it, okay? Because when he finally decompresses, and he will, he's going to come back all ready to go, and he's going to get the things done that you need done, okay? So give him time. Give him time. There's the cave over here that he escapes to when he's getting nagged, okay? But I'll tell you, sometimes he's got to go in that cave. He's just got to go in that cave, and he's just kind of like sit there for a while. He won't shut the door, though. He won't shut the door. The door will stay open. And he's got to think there for a while, because it takes a guy to process things and put things back into order, especially in his soul and especially in his heart. And that's a natural process. It happens on its own. You can't speed it up. You can't speed it up. It's not even willful. It's kind of like a self-help thing that works on its own, right, inside the guy. But once it's accomplished and he does it, things are better. Number 7, I compartmentalize because I'm wired that way. I just can't believe these guys, they say this and they do this and they don't seem to care about the third thing. No, I compartmentalize because I'm wired that way. This is your husband talking to you. It enables me to handle more than one thing at a time. God made us this way. Sometimes we have to handle 2 or 3 things at a time. All right? It enables me to handle more than one thing at a time when those things need to be handled and still get stuff done right and okay when it's all done. That was a long sentence. Sometimes I got to do, you're talking to my wife, sometimes I got to do 2 or 3, so I'm juggling. But I can compartmentalize. This might be really emotionally heavy over here, but I can step out of that and deal with this, and that emotion does not bleed over here or into the third thing, right? It's harder for women to do that. It is. But guys can do that. It frustrates women because sometimes it seems like that they don't see the relatedness between all things. That might be true as a criticism. It might be true. But there's a reason why men can compartmentalize. So, I've heard for years, oh man, you got to relate more, you got to relate more. You can't be something you're not. You can't be something you're not. It doesn't work, right? And the compartmentalization, it's the way we're wired, so accept it. Accept it, because it's not going to go away. All right. Okay, guys, for women, I'm not beating up on the women. I'm just saying this because I understand guys much better than women. Okay. We really love feeling appreciated. Basically, that's all I need to really keep moving. We don't need much more than that. We just need to know that we're wanted and appreciated. And if we have that, we're just going to keep climbing that mountain. Okay? That's all we need. That's really all we need. Men love it when wives show appreciation for what they do. Doing stuff is what we do. It's our thing. Now, often as well, and understand this, it's how we show our love. It's how we show our love. So it's not really in the feelings realm, but it is in the showing realm. It is in the showing realm. When your man goes to work, when he does something around the house, right, it's what he does. That's where you see his love for you. And all he needs is, I appreciate you, honey. I love you, honey. You're a good provider. You're a good father. Whatever. That's all he needs to hear. It makes us feel like we're worth something. And when we feel that, we just go out and do it again. Am I right, guys? That's how it works. And we'll say we love you. We'll try and do that a little more often and a little better. We really will try. And sometimes we'll even remember, okay? But don't overlook what I'm showing you, because we do things with our hands. That's what we do. We build stuff. We make stuff. We make stuff happen. And that's how we show it, because we're doing it for you. All our money goes to you. All our money goes to the family. It's our money. Yeah, of course it's our money. I hear this, right? It's our money. You think it's all yours? No, I don't think it's all mine. That's why I'm giving it to the whole family. But I make it, but it goes to you. It goes to the whole family. It goes to pay the car. It goes to pay the mortgage, right? I'm showing you, honey, how much I love you and how much I love the family. I'm giving my work. I'm giving my life to you. Women, understand that. It's really, really important that you understand that and that you show your appreciation. Because like I say, it doesn't take much to keep us moving. It really does not. That's all we need. And we keep doing it. And then finally, and I see this happening in marriage too, feminist egalitarianism, which measures feminist value in contradistinction to the work of men, will drive away your man. Remember when I said if women take over, men check out? It happens in a marriage too. If the feminist vector of the neo-Marxist praxis, right, where everything is seen in terms of power relationships, if the feminist practice enters a marriage and the woman begins to evaluate the marriage in contradistinction to the work of a man, the guy will check out. The guy will check out. It will destroy the marriage. Women buy into the ideology and they undermine all possibility of a healthy, rewarding, fulfilling relationship with a man, because they upend, in the end, the anthropological order. I don't know how many guys, there's good girls, they could be good girls, they are good guys, okay? And they could really even become a couple in an item and get married, except a lot of the women have been infected with the ideal, and these guys are not going to buy into it. They're just not going to buy into it. And they miss the opportunity for growing close to a good guy. He misses the opportunity for growing close to a good woman. There's more to that problem, of course. A lot of guys are not guys. They got to learn how to be men. That's another issue. That's a complaint you hear from the women's side. And that is true too. So I'm not saying that that's the only problem. I'm just saying that that is a particular part of the problem. You know, and it is a problem. It's a big problem. You know that 75% of all divorces are initiated by women. It didn't used to be that way. 75% of all divorces in the last 5 years, maybe a little longer, are initiated by women. It's not good. It's not good. And I've been involved in some of these, and a lot of it, this is where I draw these lessons from. A lot of it with women, it's because of that contentment thing. They're blaming their husbands for not giving them what they want. The real problem is that they don't know how to deal with discontentment on a spiritual level. But it's also, I'm going to say, poisoned by this mythology that somehow if I break up the marriage, it never works this way. I strive real hard to keep a marriage together. But if they break up the marriage, that somehow life will just be great, and it'll be just like I'm single again, and stuff like that. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. And I tell them this, don't do it. Don't do it. But increasingly, they don't listen. They don't listen. Now, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? In cases like that, all it takes is heartbreak, and then 10 years down the road, Father, I made a big mistake. Yeah, you did make a big mistake, but it's too late now. It's too late now. 75%. We have an issue here. We've got a problem here. And you know, the guy, the guy, you're never going to see him up here in the pantheon of holy men. But most of us aren't going to end up there either, right? But they're fundamentally good guys. They're stable guys and they're faithful guys. I go, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? I'll ask. Father, I'm just not happy. I'm just not happy. And he doesn't give me what I need. What do you need? I need to be happy. Right? And I challenge that, but I know that they'll never come in and see me again, and they don't. Because they don't want to hear the truth. So, it's the poison. It's the poison of the materialist rot, R-O-T, of expressed in itself in the feminism and I would say increasingly the homosexualism. It's really, really lamentable. And this is tied not to politics, because I know I'm getting very close to politics. I'm talking politics in a way, but it's really tied to anthropology. It's a denial of the very structure of creation, the denial of the reality of the male and the female, and I would say even human nature. It's a denial of that reality. And nothing good can come out of that deconstruction. Nothing good will come out of it. All you're going to end up with is broken-hearted people and really troubled kids. That's the only thing it's going to give us.